Members will be recognized by order of seniority for their 5 minutes of questioning our witnesses, and additional rounds of questioning may be called after all members have been recognized. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questioning. Mr. Curry, starting in 2011, GAO made 83 recommendations. You pointed this out in your opening statement, implicating $19 billion in savings. So from 2011 to date, recommendations from your organization proved $19 billion in savings for the taxpayer. In March of 2025, there remains 459 open recommendations that the GAO has made specific, and you mentioned 37 of those are high priority recommendations, with only 5 of those recommendations for efficiency being implemented. You mentioned the 2 high priority areas, one of which included FEMA, which our president has been talking about. We have members of Congress talking about. To what extent does the high number of recommendations from GAO relative to the Department of Homeland Security, 37, 2 of them specifically, that remain unaddressed implicate major duplications, cost-saving potential?
Yeah, well, definitely all of them relate to streamlining or improving the efficiency, if not directly finding overlapping programs. So certainly you can translate those recommendations that if implemented, you would save millions, if not billions of dollars.
And so I want you to, again, please highlight the 2 areas specific to this high-risk category, federal government-wide, correct? The 2 areas specific to this committee's jurisdiction. What are those 2 areas, again, just its simplicity?
Sure. One is DHS IT security and financial management, also improving the delivery of federal disaster assistance. And actually, there's one more I didn't mention today, which is the cybersecurity of the nation is a high-risk area as well, and DHS.
Which OIG is also indicated. So one area that showcases the significant growth, waste, as you just said, is the FEMA's disaster recovery efforts. It is more than justified what our president has been discussing when he's talking about what we can do to change the status quo. So I've asked staff to provide this chart. Visuals are always good. I don't know, we may have to raise that up. Can you all see the red lines from your seated position, the red lines at the bottom? You able to see that? That's the rate of inflation. That is the rate of inflation starting in 2000 at the sidebar here, very, very far left. The dark blue at the bottom is the base for disaster recovery. Then the light blue is the supplementals that Congress comes in and brings about. So the bottom red line represents just the base growth every year appropriated by Congress. The upper red line represents what would be, if we had grown at the rate of inflation, supplementals added. So go back to 2000. At the rate of inflation, what we will see is base disaster aid, annually appropriated, if it had just grown at the rate of inflation, it would be 2 times, almost 2 times greater. Bottom left number, $2.5 billion. Today, at the rate of inflation, that base number would be $4.2 billion. That's the bottom red line. You can see, very slow growth. The upper red line, again, indicative of the supplementals. If we go back, middle number on the left side, $4.2 billion in 2000 was the total added in the supplemental cost. If you rise at the rate of inflation, that would put us at $8.2 billion. But you notice where those red lines track on the right side of this graph. Way short of where we actually are. And you have to, instead of a multiplier of 200, you have to put a multiplier of 800%. That is the rate of growth, whether it's the base, 800% growth, relative to what would be the rate of inflation, or supplemental, 800% growth. And then you see a few years before. I want to dismantle quickly. I don't have the time to go through the stats. I've done this in committee before. Anyone who says this is climate-related, more climate, you've got a United Nations climate panel. The United Nations, not known to be right of center, saying that there is no correlation between frequency of hurricanes and drought and wildfires relative to climate change. So that argument, even the United Nations dispels. We've got a waste problem. We've got an inefficiency problem. All right, GAO added improving FEMA's disaster recovery assistance to its high risk. Annual appropriations to that fund have greatly outpaced inflation, as I just showed. Mr. Curry, what does it mean to be on the high risk list, and how that, given the increased appropriations the DRF has continued to receive, what should policymakers be concerned about it when it comes to them remaining on that list, especially given these numbers?
To be on the high-risk list means that the program is vulnerable to waste, fraud, and abuse and mismanagement or inefficiency. And one of the main reasons we added this to our list this year is, actually, your chart shows FEMA dollars. If you were to add the rest of the federal government, it would go through the ceiling pretty much. So what's happened over time is that this process and this assistance has just gotten too fragmented and too large, and it's just not well coordinated. And we hear this over and over again when we go around the country and talk to survivors and state and local governments. So I think there's just a tremendous amount of efficiency that can be gained by better streamlining these programs.
Thank you.